trying to make things easier to do by making what's easiest,
by changing
laziest
it
in style. Whatever's lazy thing, make that style.
And then it'll be easier to do it the old way in a couple of years.
Yeah. Hey there, Bob from Oregon's Constant Gardener. Welcome to the OCGFAM show. To you, my YouTube buddies, viewer questions 23. Scott, what's going on?
Hello.
Raymond McAvier. What would you use as a foliar feed if you see mag deficiency? Now, we've heard this question 1,000 times, but I believe this is in response to we had the thing about the mag deficiency, and you mentioned foliar feeding them. So you're going to fix your pH to get your mag back in line.
Maybe. But first and foremost, why do you have a mag deficiency?
Yes. So, but often with this video, it was that often it's because your pH is out of range, and you still are getting your calcium, but you've just come out of the range where your magnesium can pick up, and so you don't have any. So we said you got to fix your pH. But in the interim, what would you do to foliar to keep them? Yeah.
Well, Medusa's Magic would be probably my go-to of the liquid products that we have because it has the magnesium sulfate in there. So it's going to give you that magnesium for the foliage. It's going to help kind of correct the deficiency in the foliage while you're still correcting the root zone, because there's something in the root zone that's creating the mag deficiency. The mag is there; it's not being brought up.
There is mag there; it's just not coming up.
Yeah. Okay. So, if it's an extreme case, then going out and literally buying, I think raw or build a soil, or somebody would have just a bag of magnesium sulfate and have just a teaspoon per quart of that and foliar feeding with that. It's literally just magnesium. It's going into the plant immediately. It'll cure the issue. You're going to have a big bag of magnesium sulfate laying around for a couple of years because you're probably not going to run into this issue down the road. But, address the pH because that's your number one thing.
So you would say that's a better solution over the Epsom salts or the Mag-Amp or any kind of stuff?
Epsom salt.
Okay, same thing.
Yeah, magnesium sulfate. So little magnesium or Epsom salt as a foliar will help get it back to where they look better, but you have to correct it in the root zone.
Sure.
Unless you're ready to foliar feed all the way through
the whole way. Yeah.
So
and you can't because you're going to have flour pretty soon.
Yeah, you don't want that sulfate on there. And really, Medusa's Magic for minor cases will correct it while you're correcting the root zone. If it's not correcting it after about a week and a half of foliar feeding, then go on to an Epsom salt, liquefy it, just solubilize it and spray that. It'll be fast.
So you personally, you would try to stay within your regimen, within your nectar nutrients before you go outside of it for some sort of...
Yeah, I go right to the root zone, and I know I've got a little bit of time. Magnesium deficiency in veg isn't a heartbreak for me because I know I've got all this time to fix it before I go into bloom, and I'm really just concerned about what's my uptake going to look like once I get into the flowering stage. How aggressive can I keep this flowering stage, and if I'm fighting a pH and a mag deficiency, I'm not going to flower strong. So fix your pH when you get into that realm of the veg. But Medusa would be the foliar. If that doesn't correct it in a week, then Epsom salt will correct it much faster, but you're just going to have a lot of extra Epsom salt. You won't need much.
Okay, good answer. Kind of lost me there for a minute. Not you. I kind of wandered off. I ran down the whole... Well, I ran down 78%. I got new shoes. I had to get comfortable shoes because I'm an old man. And
I asked him, as a good friend, can you run fast in those, or how fast do they go? Because they're brand new shoes. You'd think it's like a brand new car tire.
Well, they were surprisingly fast for boots. It just kind of wore me out, kind of brought the phlegm up. Anyway, I love you.
So Bob can run. The good news is that he'd be eaten by the bear before me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's good. Want to go camping?
All right. Next question.
All right.
D.
You
tell me who's in charge. I'm in charge. D. That movie. Hustle and Flow was a great movie.
Hustle and Flow?
Hustle and Flow. It's that guy that was, kind of a beater, but he, he's doing the best he can. He was in that movie, or in that show, Empire. And he's got some kind of cool curly hair, and he had a thing. He was DJ, was his name in the show. And that girl was, she had to be in charge because he got hauled off to jail for ironically, beating someone. Anyway, Hustle and Flow, it's a good movie. D. Then we have to start over. We want to know, can you cut out Medusa and Gaia, Bloom Chaos Booster, if the plant's around flush, green, and continue? I didn't exactly understand this question. I think you may have had some autocorrect issue. So I'm going to read it, okay?
All right.
We want to know, can you cut out Medusa and Gaia Bloom Chaos Booster if the plant's around flush green and continue to rest around flush? I'm going to give it a try. Looking to boost flavor all around. I'm using the Roman line now. Yes, genetics matter, but look for more insight into what to run at the end to keep the flavor there. So this is like around the end. When he's not flushing like a flush during the thing, he's talking about flushing at the end to
it sounds like he's in the last
yellow
couple
everything
weeks
out. Yeah. So would you drop the? Will you?
You can cut out everything and anything you want towards the end of the cycle without much issue. Especially, I've got a lot of guys. I got a guy right now who's running a cookies genetic that wants a bigger yield, which grow a non-cookies genetic and you'll get it.
Grow more plants.
Yeah, but one of the things with cookies, they really like that nitrogen. They stay green and they really have a hard time going into that fall discoloration into the rosy reds and the deep purples. For cookies, for what he's asking, I believe, would be reducing that nutrient load so you're not continuously feeding the foliage to stay that color and stay producing cells. Instead, you really want them to start cannibalizing themselves in those last 2 to 3 weeks. If you're not seeing the fall colors, then kind of extend out your final flush. If it was 10 days, go to 14 days. See how your fade works at that point. A lot of guys just start reducing their nutrients after week 5, week 6, so they can start seeing the plant actually consuming itself because it knows it's in the later stages of flowering. They're not giving it all this extra protein and nutrition to keep them green and producing foliage. Instead, they're relying on the plant to break itself down to feed the flowering bodies to give them more girth and flavor and trichome production. Because once the plant knows it's going out and it's done, it wants to reproduce. It's going to beautify itself. It's going to become more sticky and oily. It wants to collect pollen in the air, so it's doing its damnedest to break its body down to give it to its fruit to create the next generation of plant. So for this one, I'd say, Gaia, Medusa, Athenas, Demeters. Start wiping it out in week 7 if you're in a 10-week. Give it that 3 weeks, and then cut everything out by the week, 2 weeks out, and then just herc and afro flush it for the last 10 to 14 days. That should enhance all your flavors and reduce that chlorophyll green flavor you might be getting from having plants that don't fall into the fall color category at the end of their cycle.
So, in retrospect on my next round, knowing what I know now, I would cut off feeding earlier, but
reducing it
earlier. But as I'm going now, and I'm getting to my 7 days, I'm not going to get locked into that. I'm just going to leave I'm not going to cut it down till a little while longer to let it actually go yellow, or do I still have to cut it down at the same time?
Oh no, you still because you don't want to over ripen on the plant, because then it changes all your trichomes and all your cannabinoids get flipped. So it's still looking at your full genetics and monitoring amber, monitoring trichome heads, and harvesting at the right time, and learn every round. All right, that didn't do it. I need to go to 15 days. That didn't do it. I need to go to 20 days. Ooh, that was overdone. All right, this genetic is 17 days of ripening. Then it's perfect. But it's just getting to know your grow, your garden, your plant, your genetic, and then how these things are working in the end. Not all the genetics are like the cookies. They'll take nitrogen through the air all the way to the end and stay green. Yeah, you really just got to strip them with water at that point. Just drain everything out of the soil and let them cannibalize. If they can find it, they're going to suck it up. They're going to keep it. If you're trying to just yield mad 3 pound of light on little cookie flowers, I mean, it's called veg time. You veg for 20 weeks and then flower for 10, you'll get your weight. But if you're vegging for 6 and flowering for 10, your tops are kind of dictating your weight. Because if you only got so much and your plant's only so tall, you're not going to produce a lot on cookie genetics. You'll always do fine, but 3 pounder genetics for cookies is tough. So, yeah, it's just cut them out earlier. The nutrients, those, to get your fade.
Okay, good answer. King. Hey, Bob and Kahuna Beard. I know how to bring soil pH up, Calpril, Ollie, Seltzer, etc., but I'm not sure how to bring it down. Gaia Flush, I know I use elemental sulfur for my blueberries. So, yeah, Gaia Flush. Yeah.
Well, that's one.
Well, briefly, what's that one?
Well, the Gaia Flush is just because it's acidic and it really drops your pH down really heavy. So a lot of people just, let's say you're at 7.2 in your soil, things are kind of locking up. You got a mag deficiency because your pH is too high. A lot of guys will use about 1 to 2 tablespoons of Gaia, get their pH into that 5.8 to 6.0, soak down the soil to kind of react those base and that alkalinity that's creating that high pH, stripping it with the low pH Gaia, then they kind of balance, and the plant can still eat the Gaia while reducing the pH in the soil.
They're kind of evening out together. You're low and it's higher, kind of coming into a range, hopefully.
Now, there are gardens, like I've got one guy in the East Coast that we've been battling a high pH issue in his soil forever. He had some Alaskan humus or a humus compost that was very rich in humate, pH at about 4.5, like a peat moss. If you're going into flower and you're chronically at 7.5 pH in the soil, put in a ½ inch of a humic based compost, having that as a layer. So now you're adding microbes, you're adding tilth into the soil, but you've also got a constant leaching of organic humic acid, leaching in, reducing the pH with your Gaia feeds. So we were able to get his pH back down into range a lot more efficiently with a top dress of, a good organic acidic compost. And I like the Alaskan humus because it is just rich, black, dank earth. Mycorrhiza loves to live in it. Bacteria is thriving in it, and it reduces the high pH in soils a lot faster than trying to flush pH out. The downfall of flushing pH out is, I got a really high pH and my plants aren't eating. Now I'm trying to fix it with a low pH nutrient which they won't eat. Yeah. So you are really relying on that one little reaction where this 7.5 and this 5.5 are reacting to give the plant a little bump of food, but then they kind of balance back out into a lockout again. So just correcting it with Gaia isn't the best answer. It's a Band-Aid to like the Olympus Up Seltzer. Okay, yeah. That's what he's like, going really low. Going really high with the pH and bring it back down with the carbonic acid, carbonated water. Sure. That creates instant alkalinity and instant pH correction for the plant to consume while balancing the pH back up in the soil. Where if you're on the other end of that, from too much alkalinity in your water, your pH has gotten too high, you just need to put the organic acids back in, which would be like a really good clean peat moss, a really good Alaskan humus, or Gaia flushes with one or those two things in there. What kind of time frame am I looking at when I'm doing these things? A couple days, couple weeks? Yeah, a couple days. Okay. 2 to 3 days, depending on... Now, if your water's the issue, because a lot of these people that have high pH issues, it's not as common. Yeah. If you constantly have that high pH issue, then, you kind of got to look at your water source going, man, no matter what I do to bring my pH down, my water's always depositing this high pH in the soil, because it's built into your water. That if you have high calcium carbonate water, that's going to build up in the soil and create high pH in your soil. So 4 or 5 days go by, I'm not seeing results. I got a bigger issue here. You really need to start with a more acidic potting soil to kind of create that balance, or you need a reverse osmosis or at least a sediment filter to pull out the chunks of calcium carbonate so that that water can kind of react a little bit better to the nutrition. Would I be doing any kind of foliar feeding while I'm doing this? Well, it always helps, because if they're not eating here, then you got to try to be feeding them up there. But, okay. Yeah. A lot of times, though, when they're seeing this issue, they're in mid-bloom. Oh, and because they've residually built up over the period of time. We usually see the high pH kick people's butt in the mid-bloom because it's been 12 weeks of watering in alkaline water that's built up into the soil, and now the pH is too high because they haven't ever reacted. It's just been creeping up, but I haven't seen any issues with it, and I get really into bloom. We're really pumping now, and it all cascades. Okay. The gold canopy. What's the deal with some of these vendors dropping nectar from inventory here in the Northeast? It goes on about that. It's a tough time for grow shops. Oh, yeah, well, especially in the Northeast. I hate to say it, but if you don't know why, and you don't... so here's the reality is... Our industry has become a two-party system. Yeah. And it's... both distributors have become their own owners of all the companies in our industry, and if you're not owned by these two distributors, they don't distribute your stuff. Sure. So... we stopped working with Hawthorne years ago because we're not fans of Hawthorne. I loved Sunlight Supply because they were a distributor and they did their job at distributing things.
And there was like,
Hawthorne,
oh, it's going to be hands off. It's just going to be sunlight like it always was. It never is that.
They instantly turned it into, if we don't own you, we're not going to sell your stuff. And so Hawthorne, and we didn't see eye to eye, so we no longer work with them and haven't.
Yeah.
Hyder Farm, kind of had to catch up to Hawthorne and had to purchase a bunch of companies and kind of cater to those companies as our other distributor. But we didn't want to sell out because we're a mom and pop shop.
Yeah.
We like what we do. We enjoy our customer base, and I didn't want to just hand our company over to people who don't have the same passion as we have.
Yeah, they're not going to do any of this stuff. They're going to go get it from...
No, well, they'd send it and make it cheaper somewhere else. But nonetheless, basically, we're in the West Coast. You guys are on the far East Coast. Yeah. The shipping of one pallet is about roughly, I think last week it was about $700 a pallet for 2,200 pounds. That's not affordable for a store to buy from us.
No.
So if the store is not buying 6 to 12 pallets of soil, they're not going to buy it. And the distributors aren't buying it because the freight right now is so out of range. And so it's just nobody can afford to pay the shipping piece of anything. We have hundreds of pallets of soil. Our cost has been the same for 17 years. It's not that anything's gone up on our side. It's that all the logistics of moving things around this country have doubled, tripled, and quadrupled, and that's really put a squeeze on everyone. Now, the big kicker is a lot of these stores have gotten, COVID kind of kicked all our butts in the sense of it made everybody go home. Everybody got really comfortable ordering all their stuff from Bezos, and none of you want to go back to the stores and support them. So here's the reality: your stores are closing because you don't shop there. You shop with Bezos, he delivers it to your house, and then you bitch at the store owner that he doesn't have it. Well, if you supported him and paid him 5% more so he could put gas in his Toyota and not his mega ship, you'd be doing much better. But nobody wants to vote that way.
It's a tough deal. Well, when I started working with you, this was 6-7 years ago. We were talking about margin compression. The wholesale's going up and the retail's going down. You're getting squeezed at both ends, and now you're getting squeezed at both ends. Plus, shipping is skyrocketed, and you've got a drop in demand. And so these stores, they don't want to tell you that I can't afford to buy 7 pallets of this because I'm only selling 1 pallet of it. They'll say, oh, it got discontinued. And I mean, fair enough to them. They don't want to let you know they're having a tough time. Nobody does.
And it's funny because Hawthorne says they discontinued us, but the reality is we don't see eye to eye, so we don't do business with them.
Yeah.
So that didn't happen. And the other distributors we work with, they put in their purchase order, we send them the quote, they go, that freight's too high, they won't ship it, then it sits here for 4 months, then they tell people that they're waiting for the order when it's sitting on our dock waiting to go, we're just waiting for the approval. So it's just a big squeeze right now. Now, to top it all off, we had the worst, most gluttonous producing year last year in 2021, which has completely destroyed 2022 as far as, there's a handful of farms that are doing just fine scraping by, but most of the connoisseur farms, all the outdoor in Oregon, there was no outdoor this year. I mean, I'd say probably 5% of what we've seen in the years past. That's what happened this year. So there's stores shutting all up and down the West Coast right now because there's just no business. So if there's no business there, then there's no distributors selling to those businesses. And so it's a really interesting time right now. And you're going to see a lot of staple companies disappearing. I mean, Hortilux just shut down. Hortilux, they make the leader of the lamps of our industry. They were the first guys in, other than Sunmaster. So when you're seeing these big guys starting to kind of walk away, it's going to get worse. So, what we're doing is we're focusing on our retail partners. We got a handful around the country that buy in volume, and we work with them on pricing. We work with them on shipping. But they're buying to the level where we'll take way less margin to help them take a little bit less margin, but still be profitable. But you got to go in and demand with your stores, this is the product I want.
That's what I want.
If not, then, OCG is going to become way bigger of an entity, and, they're going to set up different types of retail online stores so that we can help cater to the East Coast. Yeah. The downfall is potting soil, there's no money in it. There's no money in making it. It's the least profitable thing we've ever put our hands on. And to ship it, it makes it unaffordable. And so unless you can take, I would love to quote everybody to their home a pallet of soil, but most people can't handle 60 bags of 1.5 cubic foot bags of soil for their grows. So I can't even make you a sweet deal on that because the freight's too much and you don't need 60 bags.
It would be too much at free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we're still strong with soils. That we've got a Midwest warehouse that we cater to with a couple sales reps that, you know, they have full-time jobs, and then on weekends and Wednesdays they go and deliver bags of soil to 20 stores throughout Chicago, down to Missouri, over to Ohio. So, you know, we're trying to create these little pockets where we can support grows in areas that people really are still wanting to grow quality. What we're also finding too is that with the legalization in this country, with the availability, you know, all of a sudden the standards of what we're consuming has dropped, and people are just like, well, it's cheap enough, so it's good enough. And luckily, you know, and this is not the viewers on this show, because you guys, you tune in, you spend the extra, you want the quality you're getting, you focus on your flower because of whatever reason, medical, health, you just like feeling good. You know, that's our customer base, are the small 2 to 4 light guys who are just trying to grow for them and their friends the best way they can. The farms are not about putting out the best product, they're putting out the most product, and that's what's most important is, what I've been asked by farms, what is your gram per watt cost? I got half the guys who can't figure out how to yield, so let me give you a gram per watt cost. So it just came down to where the bigger guys don't want to think in this bubble, they want to think on graphs, pie charts, and profitability, and we don't operate that way. We operate on passion, compassion, empathy, and love, and we're creating a great customer base of people who really just want to grow better weed and food. But so the tough part is it's having a conversation with your store and getting the real dirt. It's not about the distributors still have our stuff. What Hydro Farm does is they go around and they collect orders for about 3 weeks, and then when they have enough for a minimum order, then they put that purchase order in, it all goes and it immediately gets distributed. So you can't go and just reorder 2 cases of something because they don't stock anything. And they don't have the cash flow to stock it because they're buying POs just to fulfill POs, and they're not stocking anything in their warehouses.
They're getting squeezed harder than the store is.
Well, and rightfully so, because they bought everybody. They bought 12 companies, and they're trying to make those companies stand on their own, but nobody wants to pay the money and they don't like the product. So the products people like, those companies didn't want to sell out. Green Grow didn't sell out, but we're being squeezed out because of the same situation. We don't have the distribution model that's trying to back the actual products for profit. They just want to sell the stuff that they own to make the mass profit. So, you know, we look bad on paper when you look at distributors because it's not in their inventory. But that's just because they don't own us. And if they owned us, we'd have thick inventory there, but I'd also not be doing this shit anymore. So that day may be coming.
So, but I guess, you know, when I started, I assumed this is what you thought I was going to be doing because I was doing some random stuff, but I figured we have to make a direct-to-consumer, but we don't really want to use it because we don't want to cut the legs out from underneath our stores. But 7 years later, 6 years later, it's like, well...
And even now, it's like direct-to-consumer from here, I still have retail partners that are super strong across this country. I mean, there's, you know, without naming a ton of stores, but there's a bunch out there that we still sell direct. Any store can buy direct. None of them have to go through the distributor. I will make a deal with most of them to get them the product they need. They just have to get a hold of us and say, hey, can I set up an account? You bet. I'll take that margin I was given to the distributor, chop all that off, and send it right to the store and say, we can still compete. But I can't ship you a half a case of Chaos, 2 bottles of Herc, and make it profitable to ship to the Northeast. I'm going to freaking die from this guy.
It's just phlegmy.
If I'm sick this weekend, I'm coming to your house.
All right, well, we're having Thanksgiving.
That's next week.
Oh, well, we'll have a practice Thanksgiving. Whenever you come over, I got food. If I got a house, you got a house. Please don't blow it up with your tank.
If you don't have a house, I have a tank. Just so you know.
All right.
My driveway will be gone.
Just a big pit.
It's a moat.
With a burr, another pit, and another burr.
And some scaffolding I've turned into a pulpit to shoot people from. But anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, it's tough. We're all in the... Right now you got to vote for your with your dollars. If you want any of us to survive, you just got to find the most direct route. OCGFAM is really going to be somebody we lean on. We have our Midwest partners. We have a couple. There is one in Maine and Massachusetts. His name's Farmer Joe's Organics.
Yeah.
Farmer Joe Organics has been buying our soil and making a super soil with our soil out there for about, I want to say 8 years. The ownership just changed hands. The new owner is partnered up with somebody that's been in the industry, a woman for quite some time, one that I've had a ton of respect for. She's worked for some of the bigger stores on the East Coast, but when all the corporations started buying up all the stores and creating this new corporate true value model of grow stores, a lot of the old school employees that had kind of helped build this industry over the last 20 years are running away from that model because it's not about what we got in this industry for. It's just about how to produce corporate weed. So this woman and this guy at Farmer Joe Organics, they bring in, I think they're on their 3rd truckload in a month of our soil, and they rebag it under their name. But I'm getting great reviews from it. They add a fert pack to it to make it more closer to a water in. They're playing with a couple of our liquids to see how they can balance them. But look up Farmer Joe Organics out in Massachusetts and Maine. He's got a facility out there that he's blending. It's a way to get our soil anyway. And if it gets to a point, we might start using him as a micro distributor up in the Northeast and then landing larger volumes if he has a bigger space of our stuff with his stuff. And that way he can distribute both Nectar soils and his soils around the community. It's just a lack of distribution right now. That's it.
If someone went to OregonsOnly.com and sent you a note, you could help them to find some way to get.
Well, kind of.
Yeah,
that's the hard part is that when like, hey, what store in my region? I don't know. Ask Hydrofarm because they don't give us that information or data anymore, and we don't have a giant sales team out there that can go, hey, these are all the stores on the East Coast that we work with because they come and go so fast on the East Coast. So. Yeah,
you can't keep a store finder going.
No, they're a nightmare.
You put a store on there, and a couple months later, they're like, "Hey, this store's broken."
Oh yeah, you get that a lot.
I want to say props to OCG too, because they had no fucking interest in having a website.
None.
They wanted to run a square joint grow store in Springfield and just go about their business, and they've, especially with Christopher gone above and beyond.
We would not be doing a website over there. If Christopher didn't exist, we'd be just a local mom and pop shop, and have been for 18 years. I mean, it's a well established. We've seen a lot of grow shops rise and fall in our neighborhood, and all of them were poor priced, cutthroat, just aggressive. Yeah. And none of them succeeded because in our community here, people want the information. I will pay you for your knowledge, and all the other stores were just give us the least amount above wholesale and we're fine. Yeah. That's how they competed. And 17 years later, we're one of the very few left that have a strong presence. We have a healthy staff. Our staff is like average at 7 to 10 years in of employment. Yeah, they don't leave. Yeah. So we're doing something right. And Christopher's kind of spearheaded the online portion of it with a ton of resistance from the rest of the team because it's a piece.
Well, and they are doing a hell of a job keeping a grow store going in this circumstance. Yeah. And that's a fucking job. Oh. And they, I'm sure they're, thrilled to have the online stuff, but it's not what they grew up to do. It's not their thing.
And they don't want to be, I get it from Christopher because he gets very passionate about what he's built, and he's like, man, we're getting beat up from this Amazon warehouse or this or that, and it's like, yeah, but they're not getting the fresh product. If you're buying it from a non-OCG entity, and I don't mean to throw everybody that's selling nectar online, but I can't ever guarantee Amazon is anything but 4-year-old discontinued product from a store that's going out of business next week. So, if you get it from OCGFAM, and Christopher is working on an OCGFAM Amazon store that will be very well linked and labeled, but it will be, you're getting the freshest, and you're going to get the biggest support if anything ever goes wrong. If there's a product you get from OCGFAM that's defective, wrong, or something is just questionable, they're going to handle it. Where if somebody goes, hey, I just bought this off of Amazon, well, who was the seller? Well, I don't know. Well, then go find them, because that's not my problem.
Well, I think there's a perception that if you buy it on Amazon, someone bought it from you, put it in their warehouse, put it on Amazon, when in fact someone's grow store was going out of business, and someone came in and said, I'll give you $4,000 for everything here, and then took all that stuff, not knowing anything about any of it,
eBay,
bagged it up and threw it on to wherever they could sell it.
That, or in this industry specifically, are a lot of hydro shops online that are strictly drop shipments. And we don't work with drop ship companies, so they're drop shipping from a distributor, and that's the biggest problem. Is people are like, well, I got it, but it took 4 weeks to get it. Well, here's how that chain went. You ordered it. This guy ordered it from the distributor, who then had to wait for all these POs to generate, and then we shipped it to them to go out the door.
Well, and a lot of those drop shipper guys have been sold a bill of goods that they're going to get rich, and they're running at a loss, just trying to keep the thing going.
Yeah. No,
and so they're
most of them don't succeed.
No.
So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens down the road. But if you keep supporting OCGFAM, you're supporting us through them, and you're gonna get the freshest and the most backed product online. And yeah, be careful, because everything that's happening in our industry is because we've made it easy to not support our local mom and pop shops, and they're kind of important. They're the ones that
Yeah. Well,
they build your economy locally. I mean, I can't tell you how many sports teams I've actually sponsored, from youth all the way up into young adult softballs and stuff. And it's like, Amazon's not doing that here in our community. So if you're only buying from Amazon, Bezos doesn't give a shit if your kid's got a jersey for Saturday's game.
And there's the grow shop, the bow hunting shop, and the fishing shop. And that's about it for any kind of retailers in town that aren't major corporations or local big corporations. I mean, it's crazy.
So yeah, vote with your money. Your dollars have big value in votes, but sadly we've been saying this for 20 years, and we're now at endgame going, hey, guess what? We voted, we suck. But the nice thing is that we've always operated on a level that we can be big or small or both, and the reality is, we can have 45 employees, and we can do the same thing with 10 employees. So, we can squeeze and we can squeeze. I can't imagine having an operating loan with a local bank to just make, my next bone meal product, because you don't have the cash flow for it. We've never operated on somebody else's money. Frank and I have put all our money into this. We've poured all of our love into this, and we keep it floating.
Yeah.
It's a bad month. Okay, we're not paying ourselves this month, but our employees get paid. Nobody's ever skipped a check here. And we keep the product on the shelf. So we still are producing, we still manufacture. We just take less in the bad years, and we take more in the good years. So, yeah.
Okay. So, about 1,000 years ago, I didn't really know what to do for the show that week. And so I did 2 or 3 episodes on the Blue Lab pH pen.
Oh, yeah.
And they are a massive hit. Our videos get more than theirs do for about their pen.
And they probably linked ours to theirs.
Probably. So anyway, this is a question about a Blue Lab pen, and I don't know if you know, and I knew nothing about it. I just read what it said there. I called their rep. He told me a bunch of stuff, and I made a video. So I have no Blue Lab knowledge.
What did he say?
Well, he tried it out. He did his first run, and okay. So here's the thing. Chris McClure. So was wondering what to do if the pen gets dry. Oops, mine did, and we have only gotten 1 grow with it. Frowny face. So you soak it for 24 hours, then 48 hours, then 36 hours.
Yeah, the downfall is once it's dry, what happens is that when you look in that ball, there's a little stick that's in there, and it should be really tiny. If that dries out, what happens is that ball's porous.
Yeah.
So when it goes in, it's literally bringing the potential of hydrogen through the ball. That little rod is determining what that range is. If you dry the moisture out of that ball, that little stick starts to swell out, and once it swells out, it won't read accurately. So you can try rehydrating it. I would give it 48 hours of don't even look at it, just hydrate it in their storage solution.
There, get the little kit.
That's your $17, whether or not you're going to spend $140.
Yeah, because they have the stuff, the fluid you keep in. And then
your water could harm the rehydration process if it's got hard water or acidic water. Their stuff is designed to rehydrate your bulb. Yeah. That little bulb in there needs to get water back into it or solution back into it. So try 48 hours, look at that little stick, then go through the calibration system, see if it goes to 4 and 7. If you're reading off on both and that little stick is still swollen, then the probe is most likely done. Now, depending on the pen, a lot of companies have replaceable probes. So you snap that one off and put a new one on, recalibrate, you're good to go. Yeah. I know like my older generation Blue Labs don't. Once it's done, it's done. So.
Well, a lot of times the store will feel sorry for you or whoever you bought it from. And
not many stores are very kind anymore.
Yeah, because
a lot of stores are like, too bad, you're stupid. Well, I mean, we've had customers, because we go to bat, we try to always get our customers taken care of from the manufacturer. But every once in a while, you have I'm not saying that this person's that person, but I mean, when I used to work at the competitor down the street, we had one customer who came in and he always had probe issues. Always had, like, oh my gosh, dude, you go through freaking 2 probes a month. This is insane. To the point where, and this is when Lisa at OCG was also working with me over at that other store, and she was doing their returns there too, and she's like, we don't understand, what are you storing it in?
Walk me through it.
Yeah. So this person, after literally 6 months of going 2 probes a month and trying to fight and getting in, finally we're like, okay, we have to end this.
Yeah.
Step by step, and he tells us that it's an outdoor grow. He stores the pen in a solution in a tree. We're like, okay, so maybe it's the weather, maybe it's the environment, everything. And then finally, after a couple more weeks, we're like, okay, what's the solution? What are you soaking it in? Oh, kombucha. So we're like, baffled by it, and then we're like, so why kombucha? And his answer was, didn't say to not to. That was like his quote. It became the biggest conversation piece in the store. It's like, oh, well, here's that guy that said, didn't say to not to. So, we banned him from the store once we realized how dumb he became, and then luckily he drove by one day when you're only allowed to grow tomatoes, and he drove by West 11th right in front of the store. And he goes, I grow weed! We're like, in front of me and Austin and Lisa, and I'm like, is that Kombucha Boy? So we're still in tomato land, and Kombucha Boy drives by and tells us, it screams that he grows weed in front of the grow shop when it's illegal. We're like, yeah, he's banned.
So that
was it. That was the last time we saw Kombucha Boy.
Yeah, it's like Good Morning Vietnam, The colonel's protecting him up at the end when he's hanging out with the guy who's a spy for the other side. He's like, well, I'm sorry, son. You got to go home. I can't protect you anymore.
It's a done deal.
Yeah.
Lost ya.
So I was also going to say that when I would mess with the pen, I haven't been doing it lately because I haven't been using it, but I would I take the thing off, I do my thing, I pull the thing back, I squirt a little stuff in the thing and put it, and it was like a little ritual. And I think it's not just good for your pen, it's good for your soul to have a little habit of how you do things like that.
Well, you're a little more OCD than many, but no, to me, I'm lazy and I'm dirty, and my wife is what makes sure the organization happens, and my CEO. But even then, after I got done, I always had a glass of fresh water.
Something.
And instantly, I just never let it not be soaking.
Yeah.
Because I've dealt with them for so many years that I hate, and I've also bought more pens than you will ever buy because I'm lazy and I'm dirty and I don't do things correct. So I've gone through so many pens because I've dried them up. And I'd love to say, hey, there's this trick. There's not much. The only trick is literally 48 hours and hope for the best that it recalibrates. And I've had a few do it, but I've had more that didn't do it.
Yeah.
So it's try really hard, just like you said, make it a ritual.
Yeah.
Do mix, pH up and into the glass it goes. See you tomorrow, because that's the only way you're going to save these pens.
I saw this thing about breaking habits, and they said the only way you can break a habit is by starting a new one, because the part of your brain that has habits is inaccessible to you. To protect your habits from you.
Yeah.
He's like, you're an idiot. You can't.
Your addiction.
Like, you go to, hey, I want to change some of the habits. No.
Yeah, no. Go ahead. Try sleeping tonight.
Wib75. You need to think about your humidity control. Oh, I think what he's saying is, do you need to think about your humidity control more so when you're using larger volumes of soil? When you got big giant pots, are you going to have different humidity issues than you would with a more diminutive pot size?
Well, yeah, because you're adding more water to the feeds and the hydration cycle. But if your environment's on point, I mean, you'll see a bump, but it's just a matter of setting your parameters to control that a little bit more aggressively. And ideally, you're not watering a non-existent root ball to the point where you've got giant vats of saturated swamp soil that'll become a humidity nightmare. But if you're well rooted, you got nice development in there, you'll see a bump, but it shouldn't spike you. Unless you've got 400 plants in 50-gallon pots and you went from 20 gallons a day to 300, then you're adding 300 gallons of moisture into a room spread out with surface area, you're going to have a higher humidity.
When you've got a little 4-plant type situation, we've got lots of people that are like, we say about how important slurry tests are, and there's lots of people that have been growing for a decade happily and have never done a one slurry test.
Yep.
Is it the same with heat and humidity? Would you say that you have to control those or at least be aware of those?
You better be aware of it because too hot, plants shut down. Too cold, plants shut down. Too humid, they stop transpiring. Too dry, they over-transpire. So you want, honestly, learning the VPD, the vapor pressure, whatever.
Yeah, deficit.
But if you can keep everything in that range, then you can stop thinking.
Well, I go into my room, I can tell if it's hot or cold. But I can't tell the humidity very well, I don't think we're well suited to that. And
well, it depends. If you're a Midwestern boy, you know when it's humid. And I can tell you the humidity because I've lived it. My face feels it. So, no, it's also regional. We live in a drier climate here.
It's not an issue, and so we're not.
Yeah, we don't deal with it as much. In Michigan, it can be 100 degrees outside, 98% humidity, but not raining. And you're like, why is everything in here 75%? Well, it's 98 outside. Percent humidity.
Well, if you live in a cul-de-sac, you don't worry about looking both ways crossing the street as much as if you live in New York City.
Absolutely. So you want to be aware of it, but I don't think it's so fragile that it's going to be a huge make or break on your grow. My biggest fear is too humid creates too much moisture, which could potentially promote the growth of mildew and mold in the flower if you have that present. But if that's not a problem, you're not susceptible to it. I've seen crops yield out at 75% humidity. Not ideal. Don't recommend it, but it can be done with a healthy genetic. So, but be aware and just try to control it if you can.
Okay. Matt Howard, how much food is in your number 4 soil? How much... It's an autocorrect thing, I think in my head actually. How much food is in your number 4 soil? Have it in along. Okay.
Have in it. And how long would it take to run out of food in a 3-gallon pot before you would?
Yeah, I got tripped up on the two infinities. Love the show, you guys. Much love from Maine. Remember when Maine
Hey,
came
how
on?
do you Okay, so guy from Maine in the comments, tell guy from Northeast where you got number 4. Because this guy knows. The number 4, it's designed, it's not a super soil, and a lot of people want it to be a well-built, long-term soil, but we found that because the plants love it, we only get 2 to 3 weeks of plant food,
it's so optimized for pH and everything that it's a good source of food and they eat it.
Yeah, and we really didn't want to power it with food because we know you're using the bottles. So if you're using the bottles with one that has too much food in it, you can't start feeding fast enough. So guys who want more, they could do that 4-shot because the 4-shot builds in 4 to 6 weeks of food. Then they can start implementing halfway through that slightly reduced levels. But number 4 itself, let's say there's 2 pounds per bag of just bone meal. So that'll be there as a backup bone meal feed for the entire cycle, but it's not one I would rely on as my bone meal.
And this is a broken down powder.
Well, it's 2. It's a fine powder and it's a pelleted.
Okay.
So one's like the 1-shot. That's basically the one we use for the 1-shot. Okay. It's a pelleted. It's been micronized and then pelletized with the calcium syrup and basically Persephone. So we got that and the powder. So the powder gets you into the rooting, get your microbes active that will eat the phosphorus, and get you into the veg cycle. The pelleted lasts the entire flower cycle as a constant breaking down bone meal for the plants to consume the entire cycle. But again, once your plants are that big, that doesn't matter how much that bone meal is in there, they're going to want the demand of on-demand food regardless.
And this is, when you go to the store and buy bone meal and it's chunks of bone, it looks like raisin bran. It's like this is way more available than what you would classically think of as bone meal.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's been ground.
This is not like garden bone meal that you probably.
No, it's not chunks of it.
So it goes away quicker because of that.
Yeah. It will last about 16 to 20 weeks in a potting soil from an aggressively eating plant like a tomato, cannabis, peppers. They will eat that out of there in about 20 weeks.
But they're getting their minerals and stuff of this nature more so from the soil and getting their food from the nutrients.
From both, really.
Yeah.
I mean, like Gaia has everything that's in the soil just liquefied in the bottle. So if it's not getting it from here, it's getting it from here. And the nice thing about it being in the soil is all the food in the soil is designed to keep all the microbes from your compost tea days and your microbe days fed, healthy, and strong, while the bottles are really promoting the uptake of nutrition to the plant for aggressive flowering, growth, and development. So it's kind of a working together situation. The food in the soil is designed for the microbes in the soil to eat, and the food in the bottles is designed for the plant to absorb. And they work together in the root zone.
Okay. Graybush, 1976.
You should send him a shirt.
Yeah.
A lot of questions.
A lot of questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not a bash.
No.
I guess I should send him a shirt.
We sometimes don't even have enough questions, and he has been a questioning machine. We appreciate it. Okay, enough said. Thanks for the insight on ripening. Herc, 30 milliliters per gallon. Circes, 30 milliliters per gallon. Aphrodite's extraction, 15 milliliters per gallon. If I'm pairing with Circes with Herc 1-to-1 through ripening, should I reduce the total volume to 30 milliliters per gallon, 15 mil and 15 mil of Herc and Circes, or would the total be 60 milliliters per gallon be fine? That's a good question.
I'll have to read it again.
Yeah, I wasn't...
Herc 30, Circes 30... Oh, yeah.
So you're going to keep up the 1-to-1 throughout, and are you going to back off, I guess?
Yeah, you would keep it, you'd reduce it but equally reduce it. Now, that's up to you, because I personally finish with just the Herc. Just because that calcium phosphate in the Herc is just a different solubility level that Circes has.
Sure.
But if you've got great flavors and results from that, there's one more in there you missed.
There is?
Yeah, you went over it. If you have a genetic that really is like expressing from the Circes, then doing that 1-to-1 reduction of Circes and Herc for your final flush will really help them express that. So I wouldn't stop doing the Circes final flush. But I do just Herc all the way to the end in that last with the Aphrodites and cut out Circes altogether. But I'm not growing a genetic right now that I really want to express that earthy, fruity tone. So if it works, I'd stick with it, but definitely take them both from 30 and reduce them down to a total of 30, so 15 and 15 instead of 60 and 60. I mean, 60 total, 30-30.
Yeah.
Coming down to 15-15, so you're still at 30 of the flush, but you're splitting those two evenly.
Okay, so this one?
Because that's what he said, right?
Yes. I don't see another question down here, but I've got this Bart Rogers one I may have missed.
Yeah.
After a full run, could I hydrate flush the soil? This one?
Yeah, because I think we went right over
I think we did, yeah. Bart Rogers. After a full run, could I hydrate flush the soil, Happy Frog, with Photo O and then start over with seedlings to keep from buying more soil? Also, I have a whole line up and one shot. Are there ways to amend the soil? Thanks.
Oh, yeah. No, I think... Just make sure I have an appointment with our customer. Yeah, I don't see why not. If the Happy Frog performed for you well and you think that soil did good, the only thing I do recommend at that level is doing a slurry test at the end of your cycle, seeing what your starting pH and ppms are, especially where you're going to put that seedling. I wouldn't sprout a seed in it because it's probably going to be too hot from all of the stuff. But if you go in the middle where that seedling's going to go, you do a quick slurry there. If the numbers are in a decent range that are 300 to 400 ppms, the pH is perfect. It would do just fine just by tossing the new one in there. I personally like to age it and recycle the soil for an entire run. So I use a batch of soil,
Skip it over.
do the grow, take all that out, because the biggest problem is the root ball from the last grow. Maybe, I mean, I know when I'm done, my 15s are like 20% soil and 80% root ball.
Yeah.
So I don't have a whole lot there unless I digest that root ball back down to soil. So if I just planted the seed in there, I'd find that I ran out of soil really fast. So if you don't have a ton of roots, you know, go nuts, but I would check your root ball. I personally like composting them over an entire cycle, so then you use that old soil a run from now as fresh soil. A lot of guys that have bigger pots, so if you're in like a 40-gallon pot, it's harder to fill up that root mass inside. So a lot of people will just give them a really good hygrozyme watering, let that kind of dry out a little bit, then come in with a microbial watering with Photo O, SLF, maybe a compost tea. They start going down and consuming what hygrozyme's aggressive. It just strips that out and eats those roots. And then you put SLF in and Photo and a microbe in, and they'll go in and clean up that stuff that hygrozyme ripped apart, clean all that back up, and creating a nice cleaner soil for the next round of planting. It'll take you a couple weeks to go through that cycle, but if you do a hygrozyme, then an SLF microbe flush after that, you can actually digest all the old roots and let that be a new soil again.
So he mentioned hydrating and flushing. I mean, you get the soil kind of all dried out and gross, and it's not all rich and moist like it is when you first get it. Would you use some kind of? Would you use the Photo Plus to? Is that going to moisten it back up again? I mean,
well, it would help because you're adding the moisture and the bacteria, and the bacteria is eating a lot of that organic matter, and it's leaving a film behind that'll keep a jelly. I mean, the best way to do that is not get them out of the container, assess your root mass to available soil, pull the chunks of root out, and then hydrate it on a tarp, mix it, shake it, and then that way you got more surface area for evaporation so it dries out quicker. I mean, you don't want dry, but you can't just plant in the swamp.
No, you don't want to, but so, it's not, when you get done, it doesn't seem like it's like when you get a bag of soil and it's all, you know.
You get that perfect 20, I've got customers now, they're like, oh, the only way I really learned how to water and veg is I take a brand new bag of number 4 and I weigh it. That's what it should be.
Oh,
and when I go in and I'm like, okay, this is what this should be, and it's lighter than that, then they need water. If it's heavier than that, they don't. And that's just his way of mentally wrapping his mind around how much water do I give him. Because right now, out of the bag, it's almost perfect, 20% moisture.
Yeah.
Outside of that, up or down, they either have too much or too little. But now the trick there is just, you can recycle that. I wouldn't plant right in it because you don't know how big your root mass or how much soil you even have left. So I'd take it out, assess your volume, hydrate it, put the microbes in, and pull as much of the root mass out as you can from the old crop, and then plant right back in it.
Would you flush with Herc or use any of the other?
Well, you should have flushed with Herc going into the final.
So it should be good to go, right?
Yeah, you should just, like you said, water it out and get the ppms down.
Okay.
But take a slurry and check your root ball, and then assess it from there.
Okay. If you did the hygrozyme, would that in any way affect the? You probably do your one shot after that, right? I'm like,
then I would get my seedling planted, and then I would let it grow for 3 to 5 sets of leaves, and then I'd do a top dress, scratch that into the fresh soil so it's just subsurface, and then the plants will grow into that nutrition and then be fed throughout the beginning of the veg cycle.
Okay.
So there's that. It is November, so we are getting to that OCGFAM Cyber Mutt sale.
Cyber Mutt Day.
Cyber Mutt Day, which is, I think they're doing it this year.
All weekend.
Because we're not open, OCG's not open on Black Friday. I think they're open Saturday just because we have a couple employees who just don't care and want to work. But we used to traditionally just be closed Thursday through Monday. But this sale's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Support local stores on Saturday because, we're not all corporate assholes who get giant bank loans for nothing.
If you can get it local, get it local.
Oh, please do. If you can't get it local because the store's saying that, the distributors are dropping us, ask them to still promote carrying us. If not, OCGFAM's having this sale. There's some different tiers of discounts and gifts. I know we're giving out a micro pack in one of the tiers. There's a custom Christmas ornament, holiday ornament that
cool.
there will be every year. There'll be a new piece to it, so there'll be a series we're creating over the next few years.
That sounds good. That's a great idea. Like you can kind of collect them. Yeah, it's just a fun thing.
Well, it's fun because we can customize each one the way we're doing this, so it's all done in house. Ryan Stanley and I are kind of heading this piece up, so we can really put our fingerprint on the gift.
It can mean something.
Yeah, and then the last thing, if you get to another tier, there'll be a Santa gift that is not advertised, but it will be special in a realm where not everybody's getting the same thing, and it'll be something on grander, like a hoodie or grinders or jars, or things that aren't necessarily on the web store, things you can't see on the East Coast. So if you get to the highest tier, there's a little something special that we're getting together, and we're like putting them in these last orders. So be patient. We always do really big on this sale. A lot of traffic.
And then Tuesday he's buried.
Tuesday through Friday, but he gets everything out within 4 days. Yep. So be patient, but it's going to be fun. But yeah, look it up. I know they're going to do a couple promos next week leading into it. So just kind of keep your eyes on what's happening over at OCG.
All right.
And happy Thanksgiving, and eat some turkey, and we'll probably see you after the Thanksgiving. I don't think we're doing a show next week.
No, probably not. I'm going to go over and see Christopher. I'll probably go over there and see him, see what's going on in the store.
Yeah.
And then we'll just do what we can.
Go from there.
All right, that's a show.
All right. Go team.
The OCGFAM show. It's pretty good. It happens every day. It's the OCGFAM show. See you tomorrow.